Now let's look at how we measure economic growth. We need to define two terms. Real GDP per capita is the gross domestic product per person adjusted for changes in prices. We actually used that in the first example when I compared China and the U.S. That's real GDP per capita. Growth rate is the percentage rate of change of a variable from one period to another. So we're going to look at growth rate and GDP growth. So let's go ahead and do an example. I think it'd be a little easier to show an example of this. Okay. So let's calculate growth rate from year two to year one. All you have to do is take the GDP per capita in year one, GDP per capita in year two, subtract them. 104 minus 100 is 4, and 100 is the base year GDP. So that's in our denominator here. So 4 divided by 100 is 4%. That's pretty easy. The growth rate is 4% from year one to year two. Now let's look at how you calculate what will the GDP be in a certain more number of years. So if we want to calculate what will GDP be in 5 years, all I'd have to do is take 1, add it to the growth rate, raise it to the 5th power. That's the number of years that we're going to let the economy grow, times 100. And in this case, I get 127.7. So if I want to find how much, what will the GDP be in 10 years, all I have to do is change the exponent and raise that to the 10th. If the growth rate changed, I would just have to change this number. Suppose I wanted to find out what will GDP be after 5 years if the growth rate was 5%. Then I would just make this 0.05. Okay. So anyway, in this case, GDP after 5 years, if the economy grows at a rate of 4%, and we start with 100, the GDP will be 127.7. I want to try a different activity. Suppose I say we have an economy where we want to find out how long will it take for the GDP to go from 100 to 200. Okay, so we start out with 100, and we know their growth rate is 4%, and we don't know how many years, but we do know that we want the economy to double. That's our 200. So then what we'd have to do is we have to say, okay, well, 200 divided by 100 is equal, so I'm just dividing by 100 for both sides. That's an algebra step. And then I can go ahead and simplify 1 plus 0.04 here. That's 1.04. So 200 divided by 100 is 2. Now I have to use logarithms. Log of 2 divided by log of 1.04, we're assuming base 10 in this case, is 17.7. And what that means is it would take 17.7 years for our output per capita to go from 100 to 200. Now, if you don't like logarithms, which is not required in this class, I have another handy rule for you in this case. It's called the rule of 70. In the rule of 70, all you have to do is take 70, divide by the percentage growth rate. In this case, in my example, I had 4% growth rate. 70 divided by 4 is 17.5 years. Okay, so this, if I use the rule of 70, I can do a very quick approximation and determine that for economy to grow, in order for it to double at a growth rate of 4%, okay, if the growth rate was 4%, the economy would double in about 17.5 years. So I find that interesting because even though that's an approximation, when I did it using logarithms, I found it was 17.7. So the rule of 70 is very close to the actual value that you'd calculate using more precise estimates. So anyway, now I've shown you rule of 70. I showed you how to calculate growth rates and also how to predict GDP after n years.